Gather is a weekly pause created by Black women for Black women in a world that was never built for us to slow down.
This is where the capes come off, the masks come down, and we talk honestly about the grind, the conditioning, and what it really takes to come back to ourselves.
We tend to our healing, unlearn survival, and remind ourselves that ease, alignment, and self trust aren't luxuries, they're our birthright.
Sis, pull up a chair and gather with us.
Take a breath. We're here together.
Let the noise fall away.
Leave the cake at the door. This pause is sacred, and so are you. Sis, gather around, gather around.
I'm Sherry.
And I'm Dr. Sharonda. And this is Gather, a sacred pause created for Black women to pour back into themselves, release the weight of the week, and tend to what really matters.
Here we unlearn survival and return to ease, alignment, and self trust because shift happens when we gather together.
And today we are shifting our view on consideration and what it means to choose care over conditioning. So, sis, get comfortable, grab a snack, a pen and paper, lean in and stay with us because there are gems in this conversation for the woman you're becoming. And so, if you've been gathering with us for a while, you know that before we jump into the conversation, we take a moment to ground ourselves with intention and really set the tone for our sacred time together.
If it feels good to you, I would like for you to take some deep breaths with me. Follow along so that we can cleanse our system. Close your eyes if it feels all right for you, or stare out into the gaze and take a deep breath in through your nose. And then exhale through your mouth. Let's repeat that. A nice inhale in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Allow your body to just cleanse itself so that you are grounded in this space.
And so, if you are feeling reconnected with your body, our hope is that you can set this intention with us of really slowing down and being considerate of all the things you look at when making your everyday decisions. So, a lot of times when we're doing things, it's often guilt and pressure and urgency and a sense of obligation that directs our decisions. But, we're shifting things, right? And so, today our goal is to consider, what our emotional capacity looks like, what our energy levels in our body looks like, and maybe more importantly, what do we value when it comes to making those decisions. And so our thought is that is if you can be more considerate of those things, then self-love actually becomes the filter in which you make all decisions. And again, self-love is our mission for this month. And so stick around with us and we're going to show you just how important that is in this journey together.
And remember, self love does not mean you're selfish.
All right, so we've been challenging you guys to do some self compassion and ease. And so I guess we should check in with ourselves in terms of how that's been going. And so, Sherry, have you been able to show up with self compassion and ease for yourself this week, or has there been any challenges?
This week has been a little challenging. I find myself really tired, going through the motions and not taking the time to really just be still and allow myself to reset. So, one of the things that I do plan on doing a little bit different in the week coming up is to set a time where I'm going to sit down and reset each day so that I can be within my space and I can make sure that what I'm feeling is what I need to be feeling and just identify those areas that are causing me some discomfort and then being able to deal with those.
So yeah,
How about you?
yeah, I think for me, when this month started, I had been a little bit under the weather, and so now I'm kind of feeling like I'm not 100%, but getting close enough to where I'm feeling back to myself, and so I've been able to get back to the gym with one of my workout buddies, and so that's been really good way to pour into myself, and so doing some things like listening to music and other things that tend to bring me joy, and so it's been a pretty good week since I've been feeling better. So looking forward to kind of continuing this project and challenge because it's been working out pretty well so far.
Awesome. Awesome. So, was there anything particular that you might have found that was more difficult than something you not have paid attention to before?
So this week again, it's been good. I think, having some accountability people in my life. And so working out, I've been doing that with one of my gym buddies. So we usually check in with each other and call other up and like set a time to work out. And so that's been helpful to just have that consistency. So sometimes you may not want to feel like going to the gym, but you have that person who calls and checks on you and you get it done. And so it's been a good way to make sure that I'm following through with what I want to do for myself.
Awesome.
So if you know the gather framework, then you know that after we ground ourselves, we have to acknowledge what's been silent. So let's take a moment to slow this down and name what usually goes unspoken about consideration.
And the truth is, for many black women, consideration was something that was taught for us to just give away. We're supposed to consider other people, and we get so caught up in doing stuff for other people that we forget to consider ourselves. We don't take time to pay attention to what we really need to do in order to be the best version of ourselves with what we're giving away to others.
And it's really when we acknowledge what's been silenced that we're able to kind of release these things that keep us from healing. And so consideration isn't just about how we show up for other people. It shows up in what we agree to, what we tolerate, what we carry, what we postpone, all the things that we push through when we know we should rest. And so when you've been conditioned to be so deeply considerate of everyone else's comfort and needs and not your own, it shouldn't come as a surprise that people pleasing, hyper independence, perfectionism, and overfunctioning become the norm. So these aren't flaws, these are not your personalities. These are really survival strategies that we've learned and that we now have an opportunity to unlearn.
So before we go any further, we want to make this really real for you. We're going to talk about things that we've actually had to unlearn and what we've relearned in the process in our own lives. Where in your life have you deeply had consideration about yourself? Something that you may have had to stop doing because you realized it wasn't serving you any longer, and then a way that you changed it so that it began to serve you to create that better person for you.
Yeah. So I think for me, hyper independence was probably the most toxic thing that I took from my childhood. And so I often heard as a little girl, Sharonda, you can't be an island unto yourself. And I thought it was like my personality, that I was just someone who just liked to be alone. But as I've kind of thought about my life, what I realized that a lot of times there were just times where I think people were busy with what they had to going on in their life, that a lot of things I felt that I needed to kind of figure out on my own, and that just became the norm. And so I think over time I just started to not expect that there would be people that were willing to consider me. And so I think about all the times, during my career that my supervisor would say, "Oh, she works so independently, Sharonda, we never have to worry about you." And I'm like, you just don't know like how much effort it is taking in order for me to do that. And so, not being considered a burden in a work environment is not the flex that I thought it was. And it was really something that at one point in time just really added up to the point where it's like, oh, I really can't do this anymore. And so I think my aha moment for me came when I moved a couch from the upstairs of my house downstairs by myself.
Wow.
And I remember as I was planning to start this task, my evolving version tried to stop me. I was like, Sharonda, this is really dumb. Like, this is not a smart thing to do.
Right,
But
right.
there was just this part of me that needed that couch downstairs, and I felt that it had to be done. And at this point in time, I'm living by myself. And so I started the process of like hauling this couch outside of this room, and you gotta like move it and flip it and turn it and doing
Right,
this. And by the
right.
time you get done, like you're a sweaty mess. And I am very fortunate that I did not fall down the stairs. I hurt myself.
Or break that pretty couch
I
that you
put a
wanted.
hole in the wall or
Exactly.
anything. And so I remember as I was over this last year trying to unlearn it, I said, girl, you cannot count that as a win. So yes, you got the couch down to where it needed to be, but that was just evidence of like how much you lacked trust, that there were people in your life that were willing to help. And so part of the unlearning was for me to like change that narrative and say, hey, there really are people. I just have to be willing to ask and trust that the people who are meant to be in my life have the same desire to help me out. And so it's always started with small things, right? So sometimes it's, asking, hey, girl, do you got a printer that I can use or something small?
Right.
And it's just that willingness to keep doing those things over and over again to prove, hey, I didn't die when I asked for help. There have been people who have been able to show up. It's not everybody, but there definitely are people that have shown up. And so I think that's really helped me to appreciate that I don't have to do hard things in the hardest way possible.
Right.
And so that's just been a beautiful transition for me to have and transformation for me to have as I've really tried to put the end to hyper independence. It still shows up sometimes, but I try to catch it sooner than later so that it doesn't lend to me getting back into that like dangerous cycle of not asking for help and being very burdened by all of the things I'm doing by myself.
I definitely resemble that remark
Mm-hmm.
because asking for help is not the easiest thing in
Right.
the world for me either.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember my brother telling me how he was just suffering in silence.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been there as well. Would not ask for help when there were people who easily would have helped me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to trust that people will show up. And it's funny because the people who you don't expect to show up are usually the ones that are there. And those that you expected to be there for you, it gets pretty disappointing when they don't show up. But what I've had to realize is that just because I need something doesn't mean that somebody else is available.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to learn to not stop with asking one person,
Mm-hmm.
but ask people to help me when I need help. And learning to do that, hasn't been the easiest thing in the world, but I'm better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm better than I used to be.
Yeah, so yeah,
Much better than I used to be.
it's a process, and I realize that a lot of trust issues with other people is really learning to trust myself, and knowing that I don't have to take things personally. And sometimes people have other stuff going on, so it doesn't mean that they don't care about you. But a lot of times people have other things going on in their life that they may not mention, right? And so it's like, are you able to give people grace too and not like assume that the reason that this person couldn't show up in my life in this moment means that they don't love me or they don't like me or they
Right.
aren't willing. It just might mean that they don't have the capacity at that time.
Right, right. That's really true. And another piece of that that comes to my mind is that they may not be able to do it when I want it done.
Mm-hmm.
They may be able to do it at another time, but I want it done now, and they can't show up now. So, like you said, you got to give them grace in the same way you have to give yourself grace, but make sure that you ask for help when you need help. That's important.
All right. So, any other
Yeah.
examples come to mind? I think that was a pretty good example that a
Yeah,
lot
that
of
was-
people can relate to.
For sure, for sure. Another big one, though, could be that whole people pleasing thing. I have gone through so many errors of trying to please other people that I have definitely put myself down because I wanted to make sure that what was going on for somebody else, I made that more of a priority than what I needed for myself. And I could be really tired, but if I told somebody I was going to do something, I work really hard to make sure I get that done, even at the expense of my own self. So I'm learning that other people, are important, and I have to give myself consideration when I make a promise. So if somebody asks me about something, I've learned that I have to stop, sit back, and say, I'll get back to you with that. Because I will say yes in a minute. And realizing that that yes should not have been a yes. Because I didn't look at my calendar to see what else was going on that moment, that day. And then I can't do it.
Right.
And I'm like, oh man, but I said I would. And then I put myself in this box of I've got to get this done because I said I was going to do it. But then I make myself feel bad because now I'm super tired. I'm not good at what I'm doing because I'm tired. And yeah, that people pleasing thing just doesn't work out as well as you think it can at that moment. So it becomes very important to just slow down. When somebody asks you about something, step back. You don't have to respond right away. Take the time to evaluate your schedule and your capacity. Do you even really want to do it? Because if you don't want to do it, don't say yes. Don't do stuff out of pressure. Do it when you desire so that you can do it to the fullest and be the best at it. So that whole people pleasing thing, that's something that we need to take a look at so that we can not be people pleasing but doing great things.
And so you brought up something that I think can really help the ladies, the power of pausing. And so I think we want to talk about how pausing allows you to do a consideration check and make sure that you are actually showing up for yourself in a considerate ways. And so before you say yes, before you push through, before you overextend yourself, the pause is the best way to make sure that you are showing up with consideration with every decision that you make. And so
Exactly.
you mentioned people pleasing being one of the things that you struggled with. So, what would be a pause that someone else who might also struggle with people pleasing might ask themselves or reflect on to make sure that they are actually showing up with the capacity that aligns with them?
So, one of the big things they can do is ask themselves the question, am I doing this because I don't want to disappoint somebody? And stop and ask yourself that question and see what the answer is. Do I want to do this or I just don't want to disappoint somebody? Or am I afraid of how I'll be perceived if I say no? Or am I afraid of how I will be perceived if I say yes? So it could actually go both ways because it could be a situation where you already know you really shouldn't do it. And so if you say yes, how is that going to be perceived? So when you start to ask yourself these questions, it gives you an opportunity to know whether or not you should do these things or not.
And so one of the things I would talk with patients about who also struggled with people pleasing is to ask themselves, will I be pleased with myself for this decision? So again, you don't have to immediately lose the idea of being a people pleaser if that is something that you're struggling and wrestling with. But the person that you need to ensure that is pleased first is you. So, will I be pleased with myself as a result of this decision, or will I resent it later? Is also another way if you're struggling to release the whole identity of being a people pleaser and just reiterate that fact for yourself too.
And sometimes you can ask yourself, is it a problem wanting to please other people? If you put that into perspective for yourself and you're okay with that, but you still need to make sure that you're good with you
Right,
when you do it.
right, right. Yeah. So for my fellow hyper independent girls, like I mentioned before, I think one of the things that you can consider is like, am I deserving of ease? And so I think a lot of times when I see myself struggling, taking longer than anticipated to get a task completed, I like to stop and ask myself, is there an opportunity here for me to ask for support? Like, is there somebody that I know that has a skill set that can help share this load with me? Is this something that I need to just delegate, right? And so a lot of times, again, if you are hyper independent, you always think that you have to be the sole individual to get things done. So that is not the case. So I still want this done. I just know that my energy, my capacity, whatever, is not best served with doing it myself. And so, again, you don't have to avoid the task being completed. You just do it in the most efficient way, and that is by asking for help.
Yeah, that reminds me of a book, Who Not How. And when you start to figure that out, it's like, not how can I get this all done, but who can assist me in getting this done, which will make it easier to get it done and probably get it done better. But we sometimes think that if I don't do it, it's not going to be done the way I want it done.
Right, right, right. So we have to release that idea for sure.
Yes.
Right. And so that brings in our perfectionist girls, right? Woo! Like, so are you like, you got to be on level 100 all the time. Yeah. So I think about like when I was putting together like PowerPoints, like how much time I'm like spending making sure that everything is lined up. And it's like, is anybody gonna even notice this other than me? But you spend hours on one slide. Yes.
And for me, sometimes I wonder if my perfectionism is just me avoiding getting something completed. What am I afraid of that keeps me in this space of trying to make it perfect? Am I afraid of what somebody else is going to think about it? Am I afraid of how wonderful it's going to be? You know, because sometimes you just got to do things messy and get started and get moving. And that can be a wonderful way of getting something going instead of waiting until it's perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. But getting started and getting moving is the best part of it.
I think we're showing ourselves that even in this podcast process, like we have to give ourselves so much grace a lot of the times because again, we're new to this. And so just showing ourselves grace and putting it into practice one day at a time is also a good way of just showing that, you know what, there's still people that are receiving good information, even if we didn't say everything we wanted to say or we had a fumble on a word, it still can come across to the people who were meant to receive it. And so that's great to know.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because we're showing up for ourselves so that we can show up for you. And it may not be perfect because we really are not working off of a whole bunch of practice. We are just being real. And we're here because we have experiences and we have unlearned things. We still have things that we are unlearning, but we want to grow in a way that will help you, and that's important to us.
Okay. And so we can use the gather framework for the pause. And so
Yes.
the ground would be the pause before deciding. And so, again, not rushing into a decision, but being intentional about slowing down before you make a decision.
And then we can acknowledge and notice what our body is saying. So check with yourself, check with your body. Are you feeling this nervous tension within you? And then identify what that feeling is. Is that feeling for you to continue, or is that feeling for you to stop? So you have to literally take time with yourself and understand what your feelings mean. So that's a discernment thing that will come as you begin to take time and be within yourself and understand your personal energy.
Right. So you already talked about telling yourself the truth. So is this a fear? Is there something else going on? And so when you get through telling yourself the truth, then you have the opportunity to hold yourself with care and give yourself permission to choose to do something differently. And so a lot of times we don't give ourselves permission to, say, hey, yeah, I did make this promise, but can I call this person up and let them know, I know I said this, but checking in with myself, I really don't have the capacity, and trusting that that person could understand and be willing to maneuver with you and adjust with you.
And maybe even reschedule.
Absolutely.
That's a great point because you can embody what heals. Practice a gentler response. Practice being patient with yourself. Because as you show up with that, that makes it possible for you to be patient with other people. Patience ain't easy. It's definitely not easy because, well, you said, I know what I said, but I'm letting you know that I don't have that capacity right now. So we have to figure out what help us heal from the inside out.
And if we get all of that done, then we get to the best part, which is that we can reclaim what was rightfully ours beyond survival. And so a lot of times we feel like we have to earn rest. We got to get all the way to we're on E and maybe negative E before we can take a break and sit down. And so knowing that rest is your divine right, and rest actually is the thing that allows you to show up in this life as the best version of you, and like doing that proactively allows that to happen, then again, this reclamation of it all is just the best way to know that, hey, I didn't have to do it that hard the whole time. And this is really an easier way to do life moving forward.
Yes, and that just takes us to the Sabbath. And on the seventh day, he rested.
Yeah.
Not because he needed the rest, but to teach us that we need the rest.
And this is where we get to rewrite the story we were given. So many of us were conditioned to believe that being good, being strong, and being loving meant being endlessly available, always being accommodating, and being responsible for everyone else. And so reframing and reclaiming allows us to release that narrative and reclaim, again, what is divinely ours. And that's our capacity, our voice, and our right to be considered too. And so this is our favorite moment of the series and episode, which is our reframe and reclaim moment. So Sherry, you want to share with them what a reframe surrounding consideration might look like?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I am deserving of consideration, including myself. I am deserving of decisions that honor my emotional capacity and not just other others consideration, other people's consideration. There's one of those little mix-ups. Let me do that one again. I am deserving of decisions that honor my emotional capacity not just other people's consideration. Repeat that 3 times. We have to take that time and consider ourselves and understand that we deserve to be considered and not just be considering of other people.
And so we can reclaim that as an act of consideration for myself, I choose to pause before I commit and check in with my body, my energy, and my values. And so, to make it shorter and simpler, as an act of consideration for myself, I choose to include me in every decision that affects my life. So, that's important. Like, you have to include you, and starting with you is the best way to do it.
For sure. For sure. I definitely agree with that. Let's do it, y'all. Let's do it. Let's rewrite the story. Let's reframe those things that's not working for us.
Mm-hmm.
Let's claim what is going to be the best thing for us to show up for ourselves.
So again, it's going to take practice, right? It's not going to be a one and done thing. And so February, we've been doing a challenge of showing ourselves love on a daily basis. And so hopefully, as we're halfway through the month, you have at least a few things that you've already shown receipt to yourself. And so this episode about consideration gives you an opportunity to add some meat to the things that you do on the remaining days of the month. And so you can consider adding one act of consideration per day. And that still counts as love for yourself. So it's not like you have to do something extra.
Right.
But the act of consideration serves dual purpose, right? So it's showing that you can consider yourself, which is ultimately an act of self love.
And add those things that you're considering to your love letter.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you've been able to work on your love letter so that by the end of this month, you are able to start to read through it and see what things you've already incorporated and what things you want to add to it. But hopefully, you'll decide to add some consideration for yourself on a daily basis as you write that out.
Yeah. So again, if you took some notes as we talked about things that you can ask yourself to overcome people pleasing or hyper independence or perfectionism or overextending yourself, those are things that you can ask yourself before you start the day. And again, that gives you the best opportunity to show up as that version of yourself at the end of the day. And so, with gathering together, it's really not just about us, right? So we are always talk about us, but we also know that this is also about all the people who are watching and learning from us. And so there's ripple effects when you start to consider yourself. And so something that you can consider for yourself is what does ripple down to those around you when they see you stop modeling overgiving and overextending yourself. When you stop being hyper independent or a perfectionist who also learns to put those things down. And so if you have children at home or nieces or cousins, and even the adults around you, right? So this is not just about kids, but like a lot of times our friends and family can also learn from our shifts in our behaviors and be willing to consider making those adjustments for themselves. So it becomes this thing that ripples through multiple people, and healing becomes something that breeds more healing.
And you think about the stories that you're telling, the way that you're showing up. And when you show up in a better way, then other people will want to show up in a better way as well. So pay attention to the things that you say, the things that you do. Ask yourself, is that what I want my children to do? Is that what I want my niece to do? Mm-hmm. Am I doing those things? So show up in the best version of yourself so that you can help others. Like Sharonda said, whether it's your friends, your family members, just those in your environment, they learn from what you do. And there's a lot of people that look up to us for whatever reason. Whatever reason, they've decided that we have helped them in some shape, form, or fashion. So I have to be on my P's and Q's in a way that I'm living the life that I want other people to see, and not just be willy-nilly and doing interesting things that don't serve myself or anybody else.
I think there's also some benefit to the grace part, right? So yeah, you're not always going to be on your P's and Q's, and I think showing people that, hey, I can extend grace for myself is even a part of it as well, because again, sometimes that standard that I always have to be available, sometimes we just come back and say, you know what, when I look back at that moment, I did not show up as my best, and I just want to apologize and take accountability for that. And these are the things that I'm doing now to try to come back in a better version of myself the next go round. And so I think sometimes that's even a part that we overlook in terms of how important it is to not feel like you even have to be on your P's and Q's, because part of being human is that you won't always be on your P's and Q's, and so we got to remember that too.
That's truth. That's truth. We have to check ourselves sometimes.
All the
and
time.
That's a good thing. And that's a good thing, to be willing to check yourself, to be willing to hear actually even what other people have to share about how you're showing up, and learning and growing from life experiences.
So ladies, I hope you caught these gems, because I think a lot of them were dropped today in this conversation as promised. So we would love to hear from you in the comments about what resonated with you, kind of what ways you are showing up, or thinking about showing up for yourself with consideration for the rest of this month, because we want to be practicing these things. So again, that shift that we say that happens when we gather together is something that we don't just talk about, but something that we are actually realizing in our day-to-day lives.
So please post in our friends group, in our Facebook group, our Instagram group. Post in there so that we can know what you're thinking and how you're feeling and how you're showing up for yourself in consideration. We would love to know where you are, how you're growing, and how we can serve you.
Alrighty.
Yes. And remember that we will be coming out each Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, what is it, Apple Pod, and Amazon. G.A.T.H.E.R Pod. And we hope that you have enjoyed this, and that we look forward to coming back to serve you.
Thank you for taking this sacred pause with us today.
May you leave here with more clarity than you came with, and the courage to live what you now know.
Take what resonated, practice it gently, and let it shape the life you're building on purpose.
And remember, shift happens when we gather together.
Until next time, keep choosing you.